Inspector. I don't want hide inspector.
Hey, Fred. Welcome.
I think I heard Fred in the QSO party.
Yeah, he doesn't have any audio.
Wait another 2 minutes or so.
Okay.
Get started. Hey, Brian, how are you doing?
Good, yourself?
Pretty
Can you hear
good.
me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Trying to get this thing set up. I didn't know if the mute was on.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Because I was off fixing my coffee. And I didn't want to give away my recipe secrets.
WQ3Z, am I making the machine?
Hey, Ned. Yeah, we can hear you.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm actually, I snuck off on another event and wasn't sure if I got a good cell connection or not.
Not there yet. Oh, there it is.
It's a busy time of year frankly, this is why I love the Zoom meetings. I can do a couple meetings in a night.
Yeah. You got a little bit of background noise there.
Yeah, okay, I'll mute.
There I am.
Hey, Brian.
Although I'm doing a Kilroy.
Well, that's better than the Claude range you were doing.
Is that a call sign map behind you?
Yes. And a globe to the other side.
That's your gray line calculator, that globe, right?
Yeah, 2 pieces of string. Hold it tight and I got a great circle.
All right. Should we get started?
Sure.
Yes.
Anytime you're ready. Do you want to...
Recording here.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome, everyone, to the October 2021 meeting of the Mid-Atlantic Amateur Radio Club. I'm Jeremy, N2ZLQ, Club President. I want to welcome everyone here on Zoom and everyone joining us on YouTube as well. I think we got a really great program tonight. I've been excited about this for a while. We'll be operating in antenna-restricted situations. So this is something that interests me as an apartment dweller. So to get us started, we'll start with introductions. We'll go around. May as well just make it a free-for-all. So introduce yourselves.
Brian,
There we go. That's a pile.
Nice pile up, yeah.
go ahead. I'll defer.
JNF Jim.
Brian, A3BK.
Herb, Kilo 3, Yankee Romeo. Bob, N3JIZ.
Ed's not
Hey.
talking to us because he's on mute.
Yeah, all right. So Lou isn't here tonight, but I'll give you the treasurer's report. We have 17,789 and 73 cents in the bank, and we're now up to 90 members. So that's actually a pretty good number. We're rebounding a little bit after COVID. All right, next up, public service. Bob.
Okay, we've got two public service events coming up. The first one is Sunday, October 31st. That's this coming Sunday. And it also happens to be Halloween. It's going to be the 5-mile Radnor Run, which benefits the American Lung Association. We meet at the Radnor Township Building, 301 Ivan Avenue in Wayne at 7 a.m. And the event should go until about 10:30 or 11-ish, somewhere in there. And it's a 5-mile event, so it's a little longer than a 5K, and the terrain is a whole lot more hilly than what we're used to, I think. So it'll be interesting for that reason. And they have requested that anyone at the event, at least at the meeting site of the event, wear a mask. And at the present time, I have the following club members signed up: K3YR Herb, KC3NTC Chris, N2ZLQ Jeremy, AA3BK Brian. And if there's anybody else who'd like to get on the list, just let me know. And our next event, last event of the 2021 fall public service season, is Saturday, November 6th, and that's the Vietnam Veterans Valley Forge Chapter 349 5K run in the Norristown Farm Park. And this is typically a favorite event, and it's just a 5K, so we're going to get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'll be done at 10:30 or 11. And it's a nice 5K, nice, short and sweet. So it's a beautiful park, and we're going to meet approximately in the middle of the park in the picnic pavilion parking lot. So anyway, anybody who's interested, just let me know either now or give me a call or whatever. If anybody needs my number, I'll be happy to provide it. That's about all we have for public service.
You can put me in.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's it.
I'm always in except for the swim thing at 6 a.m. on a Friday.
We'll give you a snorkel. You can go into the water with the swimmers.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Bob. They're looking forward to those events. So they said they want everyone wearing a mask, including outside or just inside the buildings?
From what I could gather, outside, in other words, we're going to meet there at 7, and about 7:30, we're going to have a meeting with the course chairman, I guess. And so they want us to have masks on for that meeting, which will be outside. But and then of course we were supposed to go and what do you call it? Sign up. We have to. I guess everybody has to go over to the sign. I guess maybe they'll give us T-shirts there at that time, possibly. And so we need to mask for that. So, and also they are asking for our cell phone numbers. I have club list. So if as long as your cell phone number is on the club list and you're okay with me, giving it to them, I'll use what number is on club list. If you're not okay with that, I'll see that they don't get it. And if you have a home phone number on the club list, at some point, I'll need to get that cell phone number. And also, Herb, there's a form that you're going to have to sign for Chris to participate. So I'll have that on the day of the event.
All right, thanks, Bob. Someone else joining. All right, Dennis isn't here. I'll give a little update for him. Currently, Dennis is at work upgrading some of the repeaters. So he's, I believe, currently working on the Paoli 445.675 repeater. So getting that updated to the latest DR1X model. He's been looking into linking the Paoli UHF and VHF, but I think is running into some difficulties with that. We also recently ordered a new 2-meter repeater for Darby on 147.36. So that's currently on Dennis's bench. So he's doing the configuration of that. Once we get that installed, I will have that. We're also planning to get a 222 repeater at Darby to bring that one back. And then the current repeater at Darby will move over to 444.05, which is our original 440 frequency at Darby. So with that, we'll have the full complement back up, hopefully within the next maybe 6 months to a year, depending on how quickly Dennis can get things set up and when he can get to the repeater sites. We also have a holiday party coming up. Let me check the calendar here. The holiday party is scheduled for December 11th, which is a Saturday at noon, and that'll be at the Chicago Uno Grill, which is in Newtown Square. We've done that the last couple of years out there. We've always had a good time doing that. We do have a VE session coming up on November 6th. Actually, Dick, you just joined the meeting. Did you want to say anything about the VE session?
We have a VE session on November 6th.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I have 1 or 2 candidates so far, but it's still early.
All right.
Start coming in next week, I believe.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it
you're
seems,
in competition with the public service event.
yeah, it's going to be the same time.
Okay, not much I can do about that.
Yeah.
I scheduled this a year ago, so. And it's always been the first Saturday each quarter with the second month of the quarter. First Saturday of the second month. It's been that way for, gosh, 20, 25 years.
All right. So
I understand that. I'm just saying that we frequently come into this problem that the VE events and the public service events conflict.
Yep.
If there was some way we could deconflict them ahead of time. Because I think Bob will attest to the fact that, we have barely, and oftentimes not enough coverage on the public service events, and you're hurting for people too sometimes.
Right.
So
more of us have to train to become VEs.
That's an excellent idea. Yes.
I mean, I'm not currently one, so I should do that.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's best if the extras do it. So our new members, the ones that are recently licensed, they're basically technicians and they can't serve as VEs.
Correct.
and it's a take-home test, so that makes it a little easier.
Not the VE exam, but you're right. To become a VE is.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's an open book test, I believe.
So there's like no reason for me not to do it then.
Right. Unless you're a technician.
Laziness, contempt for the club, there's all kinds of reasons.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah.
Well, he asked a question. He thought there was no reason. I was giving him reasons if he wanted.
No valid reason. All right. Does anyone have anything else for the club? All right. We do have elections coming up, not those elections, but club elections. That will be conducted at the November meeting, so about 1 month from now. So most of the officer positions are up, aside from one member-at-large position. So we will be looking for that. We'll be seeking nominations for those positions, particularly anything that is open. And the ballots will be going out at some point next month. All
Who's
right.
chairing the committee?
Rich will be chairing that. Okay. At that point, does anyone have anything else for the business meeting? All right, so now we'll move on to the main part of our presentation. I've been looking forward to this for a while, operating in antenna-restricted situations. So Herb, K3YR, has been successfully running a station despite some limitations and abilities to put up an antenna. So he'll be telling us some tips and tricks and some things he's learned along the way. So take it away, Herb.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, and thanks for all of you who are in attendance tonight, both in the Zoom session and those who are watching along on YouTube. So I certainly don't pretend to have all the answers or even a lot of answers, but I like to make the point that there's lots of different ways in which you can have an antenna-restricted environment. One of the most familiar things that we hear people talking about a lot is where they have homes in HOAs, where they have restrictive covenants imposed by contract that prohibit them from putting up antennas. But in our area, we also have people, urban hams. So we've got members who live in the city of Philadelphia in apartment buildings. Jeremy out in Villanova, also in an apartment building. And then you've got people like myself. I don't have any prohibitions on putting up antennas, but I'm going to, let me do a share screen and get my presentation up here. I have a lot of physical space limitations, and the layout of my QTH really makes it difficult to put up sort of the traditional wire antennas, dipoles, verticals that would be generally recommended for amateur operations. So the way I like to phrase it is that your restricted antenna environment or your limited antenna environment is just an operating condition. Operating condition like adverse propagation, like high noise, like anything else, and it's just incumbent on the ham to try and figure out a way to work through those challenges. And people can have a whole lot of fun even in antenna-restricted environments. Not all of us have the luxury of being able to put up a 100-foot tower and a 5-element Yagi. And have different full-size antennas for all the bands. We have to make do with what we can. Otherwise, we're not going to get on the air at all. And it's better to have a compromised antenna than no antenna, because you don't make any contacts if you're not on the air at all. So this is my experience operating in a limited space environment. I'm going to talk about what I do on the various different amateur bands, and I am going to welcome questions and comments, and you don't have to feel compelled to save your questions till the end of the presentation. You can sort of feel free to jump in with questions or comments as they strike you. So the goals here for me are to operate on all the HF bands from 80 meters to 6 meters for both RAG-CHU and DX, and to operate on VHF and UHF bands for local contacts, repeaters, club nets, etc. The challenge, of course, is that I'm living in a house which I rent. It's an attached twin, very common environment in Delaware County. I'm in the Delaware County side of Ardmore, a couple of blocks away from County Line Road, and and we're fairly densely packed in here. It's a twin house on a small lot. So on my right side, I share a driveway, a narrow driveway, and I've got a neighbor on the other side of that driveway. And on the other side, I've got a physically attached house on the left side. And then I've got a little postage stamped size backyard. And not too many trees. I do have a tall tree in the back. I do have a slightly less tall tree in the front. But I'll show you some photographs that show why it's not so easy to string a wire antenna from between those two trees. So here you can see sort of an angled view of the house. The larger picture is the front of the house, and you see there's 3 peaks on the roof, and one of them is perpendicular to the other 2. So first of all, I'm not climbing up on my rooftop. And even if I did, it's kind of steep up there. There's not really a good place to support a wire antenna in the center. If I wanted to put up a traditional dipole or a G5RV or something like that, I don't really have a place. And pretty much the center point would be roughly where the power line drop is. So I always have to be worried whatever I'm putting up there is going to potentially fall down on top of the utility drop, and that is not going to be a good thing. And even if it doesn't fall, I'm presumably going to get a whole lot of noise from that utility drop. You can see in the upper right corner, you've got a different angle on that driveway, and it gives you a sense of just how narrow the driveway is to the other neighbor. And the lower right picture is the backyard, such as it is. So, a lot of people said, well, why not just put up a vertical? Well, why not a dipole first? Odd configuration of peaks on the house, 3 peaks of them with one 90 degrees oriented from the other 2. Make it a little bit difficult to sling a wire across the top of the house without climbing up there. I was never good with heights, even when I was younger, and I'm sure not doing it now. And as I mentioned, the danger of the antenna falling on the utility line drop. Why not use a telescoping mast to support the center? Again, I worry about the mast tipping over and landing on the neighbor's house or breaking their window or something like that, or the proximity to the utility line drop, which once again you can see here in a clearer picture. Not even anywhere to store my kayaks. Why not a vertical? Well, again, good amateur practice requires a clearance of antenna height plus 10% away from basically anything that you're afraid it might hit. That includes power lines. It includes your neighbors' houses. Even if you're not worried about hitting your own house, you should be worried about hitting your neighbors' houses. If I wanted to be on 80 meters, quarter wave vertical is going to be 60 feet tall. Even on 40 meters, it's going to be 30 feet tall. I just don't have 30 feet, or let alone 60 feet, from my nearest neighbor. It just doesn't exist. Not only that, a vertical is going to want radials. Ideally, some of them are going to be at a quarter wavelength of the lowest operating frequency. This is my backyard when the foliage is out. This is in spring, before all the leaves came in on the trees. This is it. And you see this wooden deck patio in the foreground of the photo leaves me pretty much nowhere to put radials, even if I had the space to string them out lengthwise. There's nowhere to put them with that deck in the way.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I see a wooden structure standing next to the tree. Is that on your property?
That is a tree house. And that tree house will form an important element of the antenna I use on 80 meters. And we will get to that momentarily. Did you have a nice suggestion for how to use it, though?
I live in an HOA, governed community, single detached house. I'm fortunate. I'm on a high ground, and I have a deck, and I can attach an antenna to the back railing on my deck, or I can stand it on a base and then secure it with guys to the railing on the deck. And I don't use a true dipole, but I use its second cousin, which is a V.
Mm-hmm.
It's the big ears. You get it from
Yeah.
MFJ has it, called big ears. It's basically two very large antennas, the coil on the bottom to get you the extra length, so it's not
Right.
out of control.
Right. So, like, you can see
That doesn't require radials.
Right, because it's a dipole, not a vertical.
Yeah.
Because it's a dipole, not a vertical.
Functionally, it's a dipole. Yeah.
So you can see the tree here, to which the tree house is attached. So, I could sling one end of a wire antenna up in that tree and get some pretty good height, assuming I did it when the leaves were off. But the question is, where's the other end go? And really, I don't think there's 25 feet to the house from that tree. And then the other tree in the front, and I think you're going to have a front view later on in the presentation. The other tree, I don't think is really tall enough. So even if I did get everything across the roof, the other tree is low enough that the antenna is probably going to be touching the roof as it comes down to get the other tree. So this is a situation where my neighbors do not object to me having antennas. They don't mind. They find it a little bit of an odd eccentricity, but they don't mind. But there's just nowhere to put them. And that is already an advantage that I have over people who are in neighborhoods where their neighbors are actively hostile. Because there you really have to hide what you're doing. I'm fortunate that I can be pretty open about what I'm doing. My main constraint here is physical space. So what have I done? Okay, so I've got an indoor magnetic loop antenna that I use on 40, 30, 20, and 17 meters. Okay, I don't really operate much on 30 because I don't do CW, and I'm not a huge fan of digital modes. I will occasionally do a little 30-meter FT8, but I'm not big on digital. But 40, 30, 20, and 17, I have a Hamstick Dipole that I use on 80 meters. I'll show you that in a few minutes. I've got a J-pole for 2 meters and 70 centimeters, which is mounted. It is mounted in a heavy deck umbrella stand. Okay. Which I got on sale at the neighborhood Rite Aid for like $15 on clearance. And I said, oh, this is perfect for me to put my J-pole in. And this last bullet point is not really true. I was saying no operating on 15 through 6, but I do have a new addition since last week that does get me on those bands, and I just didn't remove this bullet point because I forgot that it was there. All right, so here's the mag loop. This is designed and built by Roberto Aranaga, KX4CY. It is a little bit of a different design than some of the mag loops that you see commercially sold. I guess the big ones are the MFJ loops, the Alpha loop, and the really expensive Italian one. I forget the name of the company. And then the Alex loop, I guess, the Brazilian ham that makes them. Those are the really popular ones. They tend to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more portable. But this one I found when I was digging around online. It looks a bit misshapen, and that's my fault because I'm not very good with doing handy projects. It's basically flexible copper pipe of the kind that you might use in plumbing work. So you can buy this in Lowe's or Home Depot or any hardware store. And it comes in a coil, and you got to unroll it and put it into a circle. The main thing that he's done with it is he's hammered down the two ends, flattened them, and drilled holes in so you could screw it to the PVC base there and attach it to the big capacitor at the top. Of course, and then he very neatly coils it back up in the box. And when he ships you the rest of the antenna. So Herb, when he's unrolling the thing, made an unholy mess of it. But so mine kind of looks like a misshapen tomato rather than the circle that it ideally should be. And then you've got an inner loop here, which is aluminum. That's the smaller loop at the base. And then the coax connection leading to the rig. At the top, you see his variable butterfly capacitor. It's a beautiful thing. I don't know if I have a better picture of it because it's in a plastic case and the plastic is a bit cloudy. And every time I've tried to take a picture of it, it looks ugly and you can't really see much. But take my word for it, it is a work of art. And on the other side of this, you've got a big plastic knob which you use to manually adjust the capacitor. So the trick with magnetic loop antennas typically is you sort of put your rig on the frequency kind of where you want to be operating, and then you tune your capacitor listening for the maximum noise level. You'll hear like a big rush of noise when you're close, and that's where you want to be, and that's what that big knob is. Now, some of the commercially offered loops that you'll find will have a motorized tuner, so you can do the tuning remotely, so you can have the loop outdoors or far away from you. This one does not have that. I mean, I suppose I could build a motor for myself, but like I say, I'm not good at stuff like that. But I do it manually, and I've got it sitting probably about 30 feet away from me, 35 feet away from me. I'm up on the third floor of my house in the attic, and that's the distance. So when I want to change frequencies or change bands, I just stand up and I move it. I just adjust it manually, and it's not been a real big problem for me. And the whole thing is sort of set on a frame of PVC pipe, very lightweight. It is portable in the sense that the whole assembly is not very heavy, and you can easily take it, put it in your car or van or whatever, and bring it to operate elsewhere if you wanted to.
What's the bandwidth on it, or how far can you tune off before you have to adjust it again? And when you adjust it, does your standing there detune it?
Well, to the latter question, no. I mean, definitely if I'm touching the copper loop, yes, that will have a noticeable effect on it. The things that will really detune it, and what you have to be careful about, is proximity to other metal objects. And one of the things you do not see in this picture, because of the angle, is I do have metal filing cabinets in the room. And I try to have them as far away from this as I possibly can. And obviously there's metal inside the walls. There's wiring, there's pipes and whatnot inside the walls. So that is something that can knock the tuning off. I think that the bandwidth is better than other people experience with loops. But, and here's the but, and I'm going to go to the next slide for this, because Roberto has an operating recommendation that a lot of the mag loop purists just can't wrap their minds around. And anytime I mention this on social media or anywhere else, people tell me that's not how to use a mag loop. But what Roberto recommends is to add reactance to this loop through an external antenna tuner. So tuning is a two-step process. You're going to do the typical mag loop tune for the maximum rush of noise. Okay? And that gets you close. And then you go back to your operating position and you tune, and I'm using an MFJ 939 automatic tuner. And that gets you closer to where you want to be. That gets you, I think, a little bit of extra oomph in your performance. So now to answer your question about bandwidth with that additional data point, pretty much if I need to go off an operating frequency by more than a few kilohertz, I definitely have to retune using the antenna tuner. There's just no doubt about that, and that doesn't matter what band I'm on. But on 20 meters, I can be on most of the band most of the time without having to do a manual readjust. I can usually set it and forget it on 20. Not always. Sometimes, sometimes it's a little bit ornery and it wants a little bit of a readjust. But on 20, I can usually leave it alone. 40, the performance is not as good. And 40, I typically have to retune it manually anytime I'm making an appreciable change of frequency. So, if I'm up in the general portion of the band, okay, that's one setting. But if I'm moving down to the advanced or the extra segment of the band, I'm almost surely going to have to retune, do the manual retune. And then and sometimes on 40 it cannot find a tuning that it likes. So you'll see the antenna tuner will go through its looking for a match, and then the green light will come on, and then once I start operating, it'll detune. So on 40 it is a little bit more sensitive and persnickety, but on 20 and 17 the bandwidth is pretty good.
Question?
Go ahead.
Question?
Yeah.
How much power are you running on this?
100 watts SSB. 100 watts. Roberto says that this antenna can handle up to 400.
Yeah, but you can't run that in your house.
Well, yeah, you can't. Yeah, I don't want to run that in my house, first of all. And, first of all, I don't own an amplifier. So there's that. And he says if you're going to go over 200, there's various other things that he would sort of recommend. But I don't know that adding more power is really what I want to do. I just kind of want to. I kind of want to operate it at 100. It's already and it's only, like I said, it's only 25, 30 feet away from me, and I'm not so much worried about the MPE limits because, face it, I'm operating SSB and I'm operating typically on 14 megahertz, 7 megahertz, something like that. But you do have to worry about extremely high voltages in the loop. And I think the more power you're putting through into this thing, and you could have nearby metal objects or something like that, you could get arcing. And the other thing is, you don't want to touch the loop while you're operating, because you are going to get really high voltages there. And, I'm on the third floor. I've got a door that I can close, and we don't have pets. But I do have a young child, and, I wouldn't want to be putting 200 or 400 watts into this thing and know that she might wander up here and, I didn't hear her come in and then she touches the loop or something like that. No. So, yeah, there's some often fairly active discussions on Facebook groups devoted to magnetic loop antennas, and some people are extremely concerned about the radiation exposure of being in close proximity to the loop, but I do not think that's a big issue at 100 watts and below on the HF bands. I think it's more the actual electrical risks, the electrical safety hazards that you have to be more worried about.
Yeah, you're going to get very high voltages because that's a high Q resonant circuit.
Yeah.
I do wonder, in the near field, do you get more stronger field just because it's a strongly inductive device? I mean, in the far field, it should be the same as anything else. It's not a particularly high gain antenna, but it's not like staring down the business end of a Yagi. But yeah,
I mean, I don't know. So first of all, you're radiating in the plane of the loop. So, in this orientation, I've got the null facing to me anyway. But what I can tell you is that when I key down the transmitter, my LED lights flicker. That's for sure. And I have, during the summer months, I have a vertical tower fan up here, which came with a little remote control unit. And that's, whenever I key down the transmitter, it'll turn it on or off or change the fan speed. I'll hear the thing going on or changing. And then I used to have a little AM/FM clock radio behind me, and again, sometimes that'll randomly turn on or off. So there's definitely stuff going on in the near field, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think I guess my point is, even if there is, and I did run the calculations in the tool that the ARRL has up on their website, at 30 to 35 feet at 14 megahertz, running SSB, you're just not anywhere near the MPE limits. You're just not there. Even if you assume it has the same gain as a dipole, which it probably has less gain than a dipole. All right. So this loop is $255. It's the SML 500-1 Ghost Edition. Roberto has a few other models, but this is the basic workhorse. It is, he tells you 400 watts max SSB there. He's got a couple of reviews. He sells a model that is ostensibly going to cover 80 meters. But he told me very honestly, he said, don't buy it because, it's your radiation efficiency on 80 meters is going to be next to nothing. For every 100 watts you put in, you might be getting 1 watt out. And, just like, don't spend your money replacing what you have with that, because it's not well spent. But I suppose if I were buying it new, 1% is better than 0%. But I'm quite happy with this on especially on 20 and 17. So can you work DX with an indoor antenna? Notice I say, can you work DX? Some people and some of our good friends have faced real challenges working even Pennsylvania with magnetic loop antennas, and I really can't speak to what's going wrong with those loops, but But I've had very, very good results with this loop, working both domestically and working DX stations. With this antenna, I've worked 48 states SSB. I'm only missing Alaska and Hawaii. I think that's just a question of propagation. One of these days I'll get them on 20 or 17. I've got 10 Canadian provinces and territories and 93 DXCC entities. Some of them are FT8, but most of those DX entities are in phone mode. Couple of DX stations. This is the Western Sahara, S01WS. This was on 17 meters. Distance of 3,786.5 miles. So not too shabby. On 20 meters, Kuwait, 9 Kilo 9 Alpha. Also that's 6,424.5 miles. And then sort of the best of all, VK3MO. Long path, 14,544 miles with 100 watts. The QSL card says 5.9. It was not 5.9. It was 5.7. It was a legitimate 5.7. It wasn't one of these just give your call sign and say 73. Ian and I actually had a chat. I told him what I was using, and he was astonished that I was getting to him with 100 watts and an indoor antenna. But it can be done. I mean, propagation was really good that day, but this is the point. It's always all about propagation. You can have the best antenna in the world, and if the propagation is bad, you're not going to make contacts. Similarly, you can put up a random wire, and if propagation is good, you're going to make contacts. So it's all about working with what you can and trying to make the best of the propagation conditions and the operating conditions that you can, given your own antenna constraints. All right, observations, best performance on 20, okay on 17, very narrow bandwidth and poor efficiency on 40. Data. I've got QSO maps sorted by band, and for this I filtered out all the FT8. This is all SSB using the mag loop. So 17 meters. I don't do that much on 17 meters, but you can see a few in the United States, Ireland, Italy, and Western Sahara, and then a few stations in the Caribbean. 20 meters, a whole lot more. You can see most of the U.S., quite a bit of much of Europe, the Australian station, and a handful of stations in South America. On 40, I've worked 40-meter DX in Europe, mostly the eastern half of the United States on 40. Okay, and then also down again into the Caribbean and north into Canada. So that's the mag loop. But let's talk about the Hamstick Dipole. Okay, this is a really rudimentary antenna for 80 meters. MFJ 347 mini dipoles. These are basically whip antennas, mobile whip antennas that you could use on your vehicle. So 2 of those, and then a mini dipole mount kit, which is basically, I've got a picture of it. I'll show it to you. 1 surplus broomstick and 10 feet of Schedule 80 PVC pipe, along with assorted zip ties and clamps. So here's the MFJ 347 gizmo, $29.95 they say at HRO. I thought it was more than that, but anyway, I must have gotten that screenshot right from their website. MFJ 1675T mobile ham stick. They're 7 feet tall. They're rated to handle 250 watts, $35 a piece. And here's the treehouse. Okay, so I've got the PVC pipe vertically setting on the floor of the treehouse, and then clamped and zip tied to the treehouse rails, and then the MFJ dipole mount is mounted on a broomstick, and I've got the broomstick sitting inside the PVC pipe, and then the feed point is, you can see right there, and you've got the coax coming down. You can sort of barely see it right here, yeah? Parallel to the PVC pipe. And the whole thing, I reckon, is about 12 feet above ground level, maybe 15 if you want to be generous. And I put it up there in the early spring. I thought the PVC pipe would not deform, but it has deformed substantially. So I now have it guide a little bit so that the whole thing is not drooping over and having the elements touch the trees. Now, one thing I did do is so these MFJ things, they come with a coil section and then an extendable stinger. A stainless steel kind of whip stinger, and I did trim those a little bit to get the SWR, the low SWR point, pretty much where I wanted it, around 3825 or so, on right in the bottom of the general portion of the 80 meter band. And that is a little bit of an exercise because you have to cut them, and you're measuring your SWR when the whole thing is down on the ground, and as soon as you put it back up in the tree, it's different than what it was on the ground. So you have to hope you cut not enough and instead of too much. But anyway, that is an antenna with really narrow bandwidth. Okay, it's I can get myself down below 2. Right where I have it cut for, but it rapidly goes up pretty much anywhere else on the band. But the most of the band is workable with the external tuner. Is this a great antenna? No, it is not. It is a terrible antenna. But it's easy to build. It is not that expensive. And unless you're looking for it, remember the picture I showed you at the beginning, you didn't see the antenna in the tree. But it's the same picture, and you can see, if you look for it, right along the leg of the tree house that's in the foreground, going up straight from it is the PVC pipe. It's nearly invisible if you're not looking for it. Okay, but what about performance? What actually can you do with it? Well, it's not a great antenna, but I've managed to get some stuff done with it, including a little bit of DX. Bulgaria, Spain, France, and Germany, all on 80 meters, and then pretty much most of the eastern half of the United States and up into Canada and even Mexico. On one occasion, I did work one Mexican station with this. And this is the antenna I used for the Pennsylvania QSO party. Most of the fun action in the QSO party is on the 80 meter bands after sunset. So between the mag loop and the Hamstick Dipoles, 230 contacts during the Pennsylvania QSO party. So, it does get out there. Now, a lot of people say, oh, you're very light, we can't hear you. Okay, yeah, it's not what I would like to have if I had the space. But my alternative to this, pretty much thus far, has been not operating on 80 at all. And I rather make only a few contacts than make no contacts. So here you can see the 80 meter Hamstick QSO map zoomed in on North America. And you can see, once again, Mexico. I think I have one contact in California, but that might be an FT8 one. The entire eastern seaboard and up into Canada, including I guess that's Thunder Bay on the west side, and up in Newfoundland Labrador area on the east. So yeah, you can do ham radio with Hamstick dipoles even on 80 meters. All right, the newest addition is the Shunt Fed Antenna, which I installed last week, in fact last Thursday. So I really don't have too much operating experience with it. I did have this earlier in October, but it turned out to be defective, and the designer and manufacturer was really very good about it. He walked me through a few things over the phone, spent a couple of hours with me on the phone, and then said, you know what, ship it back, we'll send you a new one. And the replacement unit arrived last week. I set it up Thursday afternoon, then got my COVID booster on Friday and was knocked flat for all of Saturday. So I didn't have too much time to operate with it. But let me tell you a little bit about this antenna and then share with you my initial operating results with it. So here you've got the front of the house. You can see a tall vertical whip going up. This is a 17-foot whip vertical, and then there is a 25-foot horizontal also radiating element, which obviously doesn't fit in the entire picture. And if you look really carefully, you can see to the left of that a black object, which is my lawn umbrella stand, which has got the J-pole that I use to check into the MARC Sunday and Wednesday nets. You probably can't see the J-pole, but you can see the umbrella stand base. Anyway, this shunt fed antenna, designed and manufactured by TN07 Engineering down in Tennessee, is designed to be HOA friendly. It is portable. It is really easy to install and really easy to tear down. So you can have it installed in 5 minutes and taken down in as much time. You've got the 17-foot telescoping vertical element, which you can see here in the foreground of the picture. And then that screws into this cylindrical object, which is an impedance matching unit. The whole thing sits on a copper-clad pole, which you drive into your lawn or wherever you want to drive it into. And then you can, and I'll have a different photo angle, but you can see running away from this is a black wire, and it goes in the far background of the picture. Just before the driveway, you see another short post, and so this wire is connected to that post, and there's these alligator clamps, these on both ends. So all of this is electrically connected to the post and to each other, and therefore to earth. So your 25-foot wire is not a counterpoise, it's a radiating element, and the antenna is not a dipole because the 25-foot wire and the vertical are electrically connected to each other. They are not separated from each other as they would be in a dipole. Here is a closer up view of the matching device. And you can see there's a screw that goes down in and connects this 25-foot wire to the matching unit. And then you can see there's another one at the base, which is connected to this clamp. So the whole thing gets connected to this pole. The matching unit simply rests on top of the clamp. So you can just, there's rings there, so you can just slide it on, slide it off, and it rests on its own clamp. That's its support. So the setup is just, the setup and teardown is really easy. It's a telescoping whip. You telescope it down, you unscrew it from there, you take it off, you set it down, you unscrew this little screw. The only thing you have to be careful of is there's a little tiny washer in between the screw and the unit, and invariably that's going to fall in your lawn. So you have to you have to make sure that you're prepared for that and you catch it before it goes down, because the main time involved in this is looking for that screw. The designer advertises an SWR of below 2 to 1 on 80 through 6. And I didn't believe him. So I went and I took my own measurements. And you can see that, pretty much everywhere you want to be, you will get an SWR of below 2 somewhere on the band, but not necessarily on the entire band. So you can see I've done measurements on different bands here. And I took these measurements at the shack end on the other side of 50 feet of coax, not at the feed point. And on a lark, I said, I wonder if what the SWR will be on 160 meters. So you can see here, it actually has pretty decent SWR numbers, even down on the 160 meter band. Well, as they always say, a dummy load will give you 1-to-1 SWR. So what does that really tell you? The real question is, can you make contacts using this antenna? Well, so I don't have a whole lot to go by because, like I said, I only really set it up on Thursday afternoon. But here's what I've done with it in, pretty much over the weekend. I did take it down on yesterday morning because I knew thunderstorms were coming, and so I pulled the whip down, and then having done that, I took everything else in, because I do think, since that 25-foot wire is on my front lawn, it is a bit of a tripping hazard for my mailman. So I did take that down since I wasn't using it. Actually, to be honest, in the kit that he sells, he gives you bright green things to hang from this wire to warn people that it's there. So that he sells it as a stealth antenna, but he also markets it for people who want to do POTA, because it's not heavy. It comes in a really nice canvas carrying case, easy to set up, easy to tear down, and he gives you these little Velcro ties that are in fluorescent green that you can hang from the wire to alert people that it's there. And the other gimmick is that he includes these little clear plastic discs with a groove in them to fit the top of that copper pole, and he gives you a little tube of glue so that you can stick the disc to a birdhouse or something and set the birdhouse on top of the pole to get the HOA police off your back, so that when you're not actually using the antenna, you can disguise the copper poles as birdhouse mounts. Anyway.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go back to the picture on the lawn. Yeah, that one. That wire that goes from the pole out 25 feet to the end of your driveway there.
Yeah.
You said that's a radiating element?
Yes.
So it looks pretty stiff. Does that touch on the ground at all?
It is not. It is not.
How do you get the sag out of it?
Well, the way to get the sag out of it is to basically you put one of the posts in the ground. You put this one in, the one at the whip end. You put that post in the ground. You connect the wire. You pace it off, and then you put the other post just a little bit beyond its reach. and then you kind of pull with your clamp, and you're going to get it as taut as you can. It does sag a little bit, and it's really only a few inches above ground level, which I find extremely interesting. Now, in fairness, Jeremy heard me complaining about this in the last meeting that we had on Zoom. The first unit I got, this circular gizmo, the matching device, clearly was not manufactured properly. There was a defect in it because I was operating. I made one or two contacts, and all of a sudden the SWR went crazy, and the waterfall on my rig just kind of went like blank, like it wasn't even receiving anymore. So I feel that something might have either been loose or else melted inside of this unit. I don't really know what it is in. It's entirely sealed, so it's a little bit of a black box, proverbially. You can't open it up and find out what's inside there. And Bob, the designer, after talking me through and doing the swap with me, he sent me 2 sets of poles. These poles are about 3 or 4 feet tall, and he suggests driving them into the earth a foot deep. But he sent me a set of 5-foot poles, and he said you might want to try and see if you get better results with those. And he told me over the phone on the weekend that he is planning now to ship both sets of poles to everybody who buys this antenna, on the theory that you could put the taller poles in your permanent QTH, but the smaller ones are really convenient for POTA activations. So,
have you thought about putting that wire tied it up to the tree? Instead of
have I thought about putting it closer to the tree?
No, attaching that radiating wire. Instead, it looks like it's attached to this pole.
Yeah.
Then you attach it to the tree.
Well, I mean, you could do that, but it's attached to the pole, and I don't know. I think I might have a picture from the other end, but I'm not sure. But you see this clamp here, this metallic clamp?
Yeah.
It's clamped to the pole with that as well. So I do believe it's electrically connected at both ends.
It's a metal pole?
Yes.
Far end?
Yeah.
This is almost like a beverage design where you have a wire.
Underground. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're depending on the ground then to be part of the circuit.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Now I understand.
Yeah. And
but yeah, I understand Jeremy's point too about the beverage.
That's right. And it's actually a very good receive antenna. It's quiet. I was surprised. So, mag loops are supposed to be quiet, but this is much quieter. Of course, it's outdoors, and so it's not hearing all the RFI that's inside of my house. But I find it very quiet, and that's nice. I think you could elevate this wire, or you could put it up in the tree, but I think you don't need to. And I think putting it on the post is really supposedly part of the design, and like you say, you are depending on the earth for the circuit.
If you put it around the tree, you won't get the response to the earth, I think.
Exactly.
Because the tree will be an insulator.
Yeah, and having said that as well, one of the things that I have so the reason it is where it is because that's the only way I can get 25 feet on my property. It's diagonally from pretty much the end of my property here. Like I take another step backwards and I'm on my neighbor's part of the lawn. and 25 feet takes me almost to the edge of the driveway, and anywhere to the right or left, and I got tree roots to contend with.
Yeah.
So I am thinking my wife really wants me to put this in the back of the house. And I will probably do that when the vegetable garden is done, which is probably going to be in about a week. But for now, it's really easy, and I have the coax really just dropped out of the window to my left, and right down to the feed point here.
If you set the antenna up right, you can cook the vegetables on the vine.
There you go. There you go.
Herb, tell me the name of the company again.
Sure, it's TN07 Tango Norway 07.com. And this is called the Go-To antenna.
Interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, Shunt Fed is the design that they use on AM broadcast stations. And it hasn't really typically been used on the ham bands. I was quite skeptical of this, and to be honest, I don't really want to sing its praises tonight after operating with it for 5 days. But check back after a while, in a few weeks, and I've had so many phone conversations with Bob Petrie, who is the designer down in Tennessee, and he too basically what he said to me on Saturday is he said, look, operate with the antenna for a couple of weeks and then write up your report. Tell me, because this is still a new product and we do want to hear, actual feedback in real world user conditions. And he said, and if you really don't like it, send it back and I'll give you your money back. So, that's certainly, I'm happy with his customer service. Let's put it to you that way. So once again, just to quickly show you the map, the 10 meters was open this weekend. I didn't have a 10-meter antenna before this weekend, so I don't know what 10 meters is normally like, but CX7SS down in Uruguay, key the transmitter, called him, he answered. It was like doing FM work locally. It was just a really easy contact to make. Also down to Argentina and Chile, pretty easy. And a handful of contacts. I've really been playing around with 10 meters because that's a band that I had not previously been able to operate on, and 15. On a lark, Sunday night, I said, gee, I wonder if I can load this thing on 160. It's not advertised as being able to work on 160, but the SWR values look okay, so let's try it. So I did make a contact all of 8 miles from my QTH with KC3ONO over in Bluebell, right on the other side of the Blue Route from me. He said I was awful light, and then when I told him what I was using, he started laughing, and he's like, you can't operate 160 with a 17-foot whip. And I said, well, you heard me. So, it was a valid QSO. But anyway, that's that antenna. Again, big plus for me. Real easy to set up and tear down. Low noise, excellent for receiving. I can hear weak stations that I certainly couldn't hear at all on my mag loop or on my Hamstick Dipole. And again, the little gimmick with the plastic discs and tubes of glue, so you can place a birdhouse or decorative item on the ground to disguise the antenna from the HOA police. So, I mean, all right, so why not just take the copper poles out of the ground? Yeah, why not? You can just do that and put the whole thing away when you're not operating. But you do ideally want it to go down a foot, which means you have to drive the poles in. Bob gives also in the kit a little driving tool, a little sort of a heavy-weighted gripper thing that you can pound the poles down into the earth. I was lucky that my soil was pretty soft and the poles went right in. But depending on your soil conditions and depending on the operator's physical condition, you may not want to be taking the poles out every single time. You may want to leave them up there. So I guess that's why he puts that little gimmick in with those little circular discs for disguising the antenna. So I mean that's how I operate. So any questions, comments that we haven't already covered?
Now, the SWR on that antenna looks kind of interesting. It looks like there's some frequencies that just have bad SWRs.
That's right. So,
landmines that you have to avoid. You have to know what those frequencies are.
Well, I mean, I guess so. Or, the other thing is you can always use your internal tuner on your rig or an external tuner. I mean, like, for example, on 40 meters here, you've got one spike here where you're at around 3.
Yeah.
And that's not awful. That's not great, but it's not awful. On 80, you're spiking at around 3, just past where I have this center point. On 20, there's nothing terrible. There's nothing really bad on 20. On 10 meters, you have one frequency here that looks pretty bad, where it's up to 5.
Yeah.
And on 15, there's nothing above 3. And then I guess I have this obscured, but I guess this must be 12, right? No, this is 17. 17 is the one that looks a little bit funky.
Yeah, so an internal tuner should handle that, but otherwise you got to watch out because it's high enough that your transmitter will complain.
Well, and I mean that's right, and then once again it depends on what you're using as a transmitter. So certainly if you are using a relatively modern transmitter, it will it'll just cut its power when it sees that really ugly SWR. But if you've got older equipment that doesn't have that circuitry built in, you can really do some damage to your rig. So that's definitely a good point. Yeah, I mean when I got the first unit, I did the similar SWR measurements back in early October, and SWR was beautifully flat on every band, but I think that was a bug, not a feature. It was beautifully flat at like 1.5 or 1.3 or something on every single band. And then, after making a few contacts, it was beautifully flat at 5 on every band. And I the minute I saw these peaks and valleys, I said, well, that's more like what I was expecting, because nothing is going to be, perfect on every band with such wide bandwidth.
Yeah, except a 70 ohm resistor or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So those of you, so Brian, you mentioned you're in an HOA community.
Yes.
So and you use the big ears.
Yes.
How does that work for
I
you?
sometimes use it vertical. Depends how energetic I'm feeling. The problem with the big ears is that the arms are so long that you have to run the telescope out first and then screw it into the base. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of torque. Mm-hmm. So it takes 2 hands to screw it into place.
So what kind of results does that give you?
I've gotten to Canada and Western United States.
Okay.
My best viewing tends to be south and west because of the topography. I'm basically on a cliff. Okay, I have no backyard at all. It's a downward slope. In fact, it's so steep they had to put in a second retaining wall.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Well, I mean, if you did have an antenna, that gave you some good takeoff angles in that direction.
oh yeah, it's great for that in those directions. Going
Yeah.
north, that's tough because there's a slight uphill slope to the north. The towers for the FM, I just have a vertical set up in the house because I'm running low watts. So and I hit the MARC repeaters like Newtown, the 06, without any problem. I've gotten no complaints on any of the Wednesday or Sunday nets. Or
yeah, I mean,
rag chew on.
I thought about putting my J-pole up on the roof or at least up in the treehouse, but I hit the repeaters that I need to hit just fine, and I'm not trying to do 2 meter, distance DX or contesting or anything. So having it sitting right on ground level is working for me. So
yeah, that ground level wouldn't work for me.
Right, because you don't have the ground.
I don't have any ground, right? But the good news is I'm way up.
Yeah.
So, in order to get it that much on a radiating element, I'd have to drop the wire off the side of the deck.
So what about some of the others? I mean, Fred, I hear you often ahead of me in pileups, and you have a really great signal. So what are you using?
I use a mystery antenna, which is a dipole about 30 feet up, and it's attached to a tree on one side of my front yard. It runs across the front of the house, and then it takes an angle, and I have it connected to a tree in the backyard, which actually belongs to my neighbor. I had a tree company with a truck and a lift attach some pulleys in there. So I was able to get it attached, and when I have a problem, I drop it and then fix it. And it's 98, 99 feet long, and I use it on 80 through 440.
Oh, wow.
And it gives me great SWR on most of the frequencies.
And how much power are you feeding it with?
I have 100 watts here, and I have 180 watts.
Oh, all right.
It'll take a kilowatt.
But you generally are running barefoot.
Always barefoot. Yeah.
Always barefoot. Yeah. I mean, I heard you during the QSO party, and I often hear you sometimes in the afternoons working some DX stations, and of course we're not that far apart geographically, but you always have a really strong signal. You always sound really good.
Thanks.
What do you use as a feed line, Fred?
The mystery antenna has twin lead coming down. It's about probably around 20 feet of feed line of twin lead, and not twin lead. It's with the
ladder line.
Ladder line, yeah.
450 ladder line.
Yeah, and it's then has I have a matching section in there of coax for and it tunes it up for 20 meters. And if I took that out, I'd be better on 40 and 80. But the matching section seems, with the tuner, I can use all the bands. And then from that, I use LMR 400 coming into the station. and have it, of course, on a lightning arrestor. But that's all I have right now, and I really need to put up a couple more antennas. So the one there that we were shown tonight with the vertical and the 25-foot line, that sounds really interesting. I might try that. By the way, how much does that cost?
It's not it's not a cheap antenna. He wants $499 for it.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
yeah, the theory is that the R&D that went into making that that little black box is what he's charging you for. A point that was raised by Steve's question is a really good one, and I should have mentioned this, which is that feed line is really important. And especially if you're already operating a compromised antenna system, you don't want to skimp on feed line. You want to squeeze out 1/4 of a dB, 1/2 of a dB, wherever you can. And I can just tell you from practical experience, when I installed the mag loop 3 years back, I went and bought sort of generic coax. I guess it was 8X or something, and is okay. But about a month or so ago, I went and put in a BR240, which is lower loss, and I can hear the difference, and I can see the difference in contacts that I'm making. So I'm getting stations now, like POTA stations and others, who are saying, "Oh, you're a 4.6." Something like that. All right, well, that's not a great signal report, but before I changed the feed line, they weren't hearing me at all. So I'm now noticing I'm getting more poor reports, but contacts, than I was sometimes. I was only getting contacts in even though it's a lot on the map. I'm definitely noticed the difference that the improved feed line has made. Steve, you have a great antenna system, don't you? You have a lot of property, don't you?
So I do, and I'd love to tell you a little bit about a terminated end-fed inverted V antenna. The terminated is the key point, and the thing to realize is it is not a standing wave antenna. It is a traveling wave antenna, because with the termination, you have a resistor at the end, which may absorb up to 1/3 of the energy you put into the antenna. So, like every antenna, it's a compromise. However, the darn thing tunes from 1.8 to 54 megahertz at a SWR always less than 3. And this is continuous, which is why the military uses terminated broadband antennas like this. Now, the thing that's interesting about it, yes, I have a lot of property, and yes, my antenna radiating wire is 265 feet long. But you can make one of these antennas with a radiating wire as short as 45 feet. And mostly what you will lose is it'll still tune even on 160 meters, but you will definitely be down from a dipole on a 45 footer on 160 meters. You'll be about 9 dB down from a dipole. On 80 meters, about 6 dB down.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot. Especially on those bands. Especially on those bands where there's so much atmospheric noise and successful operating is all about punching through the noise.
Right.
So, yeah. But that's very interesting.
That's with the 45-foot version. If you go to the 90-foot version, or better, the 130-foot version, which you don't have the option for, Herb, but it would seem to me that you might be able to make an inverted V with a relatively short mast on the front peak or rear peak of your house, and you can come down to 5 foot off ground level at the bottom ends of the V.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So, I mean, I guess, that kind of leads me to something which maybe I should have said first in this whole talk, which is that I think, a lot of people are fortunate to have the property where they can put up any kind of antenna system they want. And, God bless them. I think that's wonderful. But antenna systems are a real challenge for younger new hams and for older hams for different reasons. But they, there's a subset of people, and they're, maybe in their 40s or something, and they've got a nice house in the suburbs, and they got trees, and they can string up whatever they want. But there is at the two brackets of the entry level hams, younger people who may be apartment dwellers, who may live in a townhouse or something. And then on the older end, where people are maybe in an HOA community, or I don't know what they call the community where you've got whatever, I don't know the word for it, but or where you don't have the physical ability to be going up on your roof or climbing up on towers and masts. So that's where I think there's a lot of challenge for antennas. And so I do see a lot on social media, and I do hear a lot on the air about, if you don't have a tower and you don't have this 40 feet up or 60 feet up and a dipole and running, full legal limit, what are you really doing? You're just only, you're only wasting your time. But you're not, because you're getting on the air and you're facing operating condition challenges, and it's real easy to go and run 1,500 watts and punch through a pileup with a beam antenna at 100 feet in the air. But to hear and be heard with your big ears, or with an indoor loop, or with a random wire that's dangling from your apartment balcony or something like that, I think that shows some operator skills. So, I just leave that there. And so it's a word of encouragement for people who are in an antenna compromised situation. Don't listen to the naysayers. Get out there and do it.
Herb, this is Fred. It's real interesting in Florida, where I lived for many years. The legislature made a law that any person who lived in a HOA could put up a clothesline. So there are a lot of hams that have clothesline antennas and some of them even have ones that look like spider webs and things like that. Turn them around, and so every once in a while they hang some clothes on it, but it's legal.
Yeah. And the flagpole antenna, because I think it's illegal to prohibit somebody from putting up a flagpole on their own property. So there are people who use the flagpole verticals.
Yeah.
There's always a way.
The thing, so speaking to both of those communities, Herb, again, I am blessed with a lot of land. Also with an XYL who drew very sharp lines on where I could place an antenna on that land. But it is basically a wire antenna that will work well 40 through 6 at a length of 45 feet. And the only additional cost over the 9-to-1 bow and your coaxial feed line is a 500 ohm, 100-watt resistor, which you can buy from Palomar Engineering. And I was kind of laughing when you were talking about banging in that 5-foot ground rod. In my system, including my semi-peripheral grounding system for the house, I have 6 8-foot ground rods in the ground that we drove all by hand. But I would tell you the first part, there's this trick with pouring water because the water makes mud and the mud lubricates and you can just pick it up and down. I got the first 4 feet in just by holding the grounding rod and pounding it up and down that way, and only the last 3.5 feet driving it with a 2.5-pound sledge. So sometimes it took me 2 or 3 days to get those last 3 feet. But wire antennas are inexpensive. And if you have side lots so that you can go from front to rear, which of course you don't have in a row home, that's one of the things you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think even a small property with a little side yard or something like that, if I wasn't in a twin, I think my options would be a lot easier. But I got the driveway on one side of me, and I got physically another house attached to me on the other side, and and if I had a flat roof like a row home in Philadelphia, it would be easier because I could just put something on top of it. So I mean, there's just a lot of factors that make it a challenge, and every time I'm out there in the nice weather, and I'll find myself gazing up at the roof, and my wife will turn to me and say, "You're thinking about antennas again, aren't you? You're trying to think where you can put an antenna up there." Like, well, yeah, that's what I'm always thinking about what I can do to make it better.
Well, this guy I learned about this antenna from lives up in Toronto, in your situation. And what he did was put a pole up right next to the house on the driveway, built it out of 2x4s, and made that the peak of his V.
Yes. Where was his utility drop?
I don't know the answer, but if you've got your if you've got your electric coming in over there,
It isn't happening.
it ruins ruins that theory.
Right.
You know, I love ham radio. For 43 years, I was an emergency physician. Now, when I come up with harebrained ideas, nobody dies.
No, I mean it's a wonderful thing because it's a hobby that it rewards experimentation,
Yeah.
right? So you try something and you see if it works, and maybe it'll work, maybe it doesn't work at all. Okay, try something else. Maybe it works, and then you do that, and then you think, okay, how can I do this better? Is there something I can do to improve on that? And that's half the fun of it.
Speaking of utility drops,
What are you aiming at us?
this is 4/0 aluminum is the utility drop to my house. This is
And it's in your living room. Why?
this is just a piece that was hacked off that I kept.
Okay.
I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else have any comments or observations?
Just thank you for an interesting talk.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the great questions and participation. I had a lot of fun giving, both preparing for this and actually delivering it. I really enjoyed it.
So one more question about so
Sure.
you go out and do POTA?
I have never gone out and done POTA, but I want to. And one of the things that was holding me back is that while my mag loop is portable, I don't really like carrying it up and down the narrow stairs to my attic. So I think that this new edition, this shunt antenna, is going to let me go out and do POTA. It's a little bit heavy to do SOTA. It is on the heavy side. But if you are doing POTA and you can just throw it in the trunk of your car or the back of your car and set up not that far from your parking space, I think it's a great option.
Sounds great.
So it is an activity that I really do want to start doing because it's a way to do ham radio and not be stuck indoors.
What rig will you use for POTA, Herb?
Well, I'll probably just use my my same rig, my ICOM 7300.
So how much battery are you going to carry?
This much battery.
How big a BioEno is that?
This is the 240, the 1220A is what it is. So this, they say, this should give me about 10 hours.
At what? At 5 or 10 watts output?
There's a chart that I have, but no, more than that.
I'm asking because I'm trying to decide how big a battery to buy right now for.
Well, I mean, and not only that, but
991, which
yeah, no, I mean, in theory, I think at like 50 watts, or something like that. You're supposed to get enough that it would be more hours than I'd probably be out in the park. But not only that, in addition to the battery, I bought Bioenno's solar panel and solar charge controller. So in theory, I could operate out of doors indefinitely.
Very cool. I'm looking at that, going that same sort of direction, although the Bioenno solar panel was rather expensive compared to comparable wattage from Harbor Freight. And all you have to do is cut off the Harbor Freight connectors and put Anderson power poles on it.
Yeah.
It'll work with the Bioenno charge controller.
Yeah.
Okay.
All righty.
Further conversation on power for the field on the radio, in email, whatever. I'll be in touch.
Yeah, definitely. And Jeremy, why don't we have one of our POTA operators do a presentation for a future meeting on operating POTA or activating POTA?
Hey, Steve, to answer your question, I have a spreadsheet that I used to figure out how much battery I needed for different applications. Because I have, for my car, my mobile in the car, I don't use the car battery. I have a standalone battery. But when I go out in the field and set up in one of the parks, I use either this little guy, or I have a bigger one now, thanks to the Hamfest that we had. I got the door prize of a larger battery. This one is 15 amp hours. So if you want that spreadsheet, I can send you a copy of it. Just give me your email.
My email is good on QRZ, Brian. Thank you. I'd love to see that spreadsheet. Be a big help.
Yeah, basically, you plug in the parameters you're going to operate under, and then the amp hour requirements. That'd be great.
Can I hijack the meeting to make a small announcement? Maybe not so small. I talked about it on the net the other night, but I've stood up a VHF 2-meter WinLink gateway at 145.65 running Vara FM. And the reason I'm reminded to mention it is that it's all battery backed up and will run. I have a 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery, not Bioenno, brand X. And the computer is a 12-volt computer, and the networking hardware in the barn is also supported off the battery. And when we bought this house 3.5 years ago, the previous owners who'd become pretty invalided and had the experience of a bad power outage had installed a 20 kilowatt generator. So in the house itself, I have a natural gas powered 20 kilowatt generator, and all of the network in the house is on that. And I have both Fios and Comcast as failover. So I think I mean, I haven't tested it yet. I haven't pulled a plug, but I think that I have a fairly robust 10 to 12 hours of operating time on battery power. And but now I want to do some POTA, and I want to operate on field day off batteries. So I'm trying to learn about that. Your spreadsheet will be a big help, Brian. Thank you.
Okay. Will do. I'll send it out. Yeah, I got you down for your call sign at arl.net.
Yeah,
Okay. I'll
that
send it out
works.
tonight.
Thank you, sir.
You have no audio, Jeremy.
He might not be talking to us.
He's talking to somebody. No,
It's interesting. You're not muted. Your mic is not connected. Check your device settings. Ah. Okay. His computer crashed.
He's the host too.
well, he's going to have to say goodbye on the chat. Yes,
Yeah. Are we still live on YouTube?
yes.
Uh-oh. All righty.
I think it stopped recording a while ago.
It's not recorded.
Did stop
we're
recording.
It's
live.
not recorded, but we're live streaming.
Okay.
So on behalf of the MARC Club, we thank you all for participating in tonight's meeting.
Was it-
And